If you think that during a chemical disaster, or heavy metal contamination, expensive water filters, or those go-to-survival straws are going to save your life, you're actually drinking poison without even knowing it. The truth is, those overhyped survival gear choices are completely useless against chemical toxins. They filter out water that looks crystal clear and has zero odor, which unfortunately gives you a false sense of security, while your organs are being quietly destroyed. So, relying on standard filtration systems under these extreme conditions is a critical error. Now, it remains unclear exactly how many people currently rely on these devices for chemical protection, but there is a clear lack of evidence showing they can handle industrial-grade toxins. Today, we're exposing 5 deadly survival water filter mistakes in this extreme contamination scenario. And some of this gear? You might actually own it. A lot of people putting together survival gear or building an emergency kit are completely overhyping the standard LifeStraw. Don't get me wrong, it's lightweight, cheap, and does an incredible job filtering out bacteria, parasites, and microplastics, up to 99.9999%. If you're drinking from a creek or a stagnant, muddy puddle through this thing, you generally don't have to worry about getting severely ill or dealing with acute diarrhea. But here's the critical limitation that could actually be dangerous. The LifeStraw is completely useless against chemicals and heavy metals. At its core, this is just a mechanical hollow fiber membrane filter. It easily stops massive bacteria cells, but it doesn't contain activated carbon. It doesn't use ion exchange beads, and it definitely isn't a reverse osmosis membrane. This means that lead, arsenic, mercury, pesticides, or industrial runoff will pass right through the filter, going straight into your system. The most dangerous part about using this in a chemically contaminated area is the visual deception. When you draw water through this straw, the output looks incredibly clear, clean, and completely free of any muddy smell. This creates a false sense of security. Because the water looks clean, you keep drinking it. You won't get a stomachache right away. But those dissolved toxins are absorbing, accumulating, and damaging your internal organs over time. If you're planning to buy the standard LifeStraw water filter for a survival kit or bug-out bag, you need to keep 3 rules in mind. First, absolutely never use the LifeStraw in water sources near industrial zones, agricultural land sprayed with pesticides, or close to mining operations. Second, only use it in an absolute worst-case scenario where the alternative is dying of dehydration. At that point, you're accepting a trade-off, deciding it's better to deal with gradual poisoning than to drop dead of thirst right then and there. Third, the very second you quench your thirst, the only thing left to do is grab your pack and move as fast as possible to find a truly safe water source. Let me know your thoughts on this analysis in the comments below. If you're a prepper who treats the Sawyer squeeze as the absolute king of your emergency survival kit, thinking it can handle any water source on the planet, stop right there for a second. This thing is incredibly durable. It can literally last a lifetime, and it'll save your life deep in the backcountry. But if you bring it into an urban survival scenario, or a chemical disaster zone, it turns into a death trap. Don't get me wrong, the Sawyer squeeze is amazing. With its 0.1 micron pore size, it completely filters out bacteria, parasites, and sediment. No matter how turbid or muddy the water is, a quick backflush restores it to brand new. And that lifetime warranty from Sawyer? It's not just for show. But that's only for natural wilderness water. When it comes to chemicals and heavy metals, this thing is completely useless. Why? Because the Sawyer squeeze is purely a mechanical filter. It's basically just an incredibly dense mesh designed to physically block particles. It doesn't have activated carbon. It doesn't use ion exchange beads, and it definitely isn't a reverse osmosis membrane. This means that dissolved toxins like lead, mercury, arsenic, pesticides, or industrial runoff will pass right through those 0.1 micron pores, with zero resistance. The water coming out is still loaded with toxins. Even Sawyer themselves has openly confirmed and warned about this. And that's not all. This filter also can't handle dissolved biological toxins, like those from blue-green algae blooms, or animal carcasses decomposing upstream. Now, if the water has an oily sheen or grease on the surface, absolutely do not try to filter it. Not only will it fail to remove those chemical toxins, but the oil and grease will coat the membrane, clogging it up, and ruining your filter instantly. Don't let your eyes trick you. The water coming out looks crystal clear. It has zero muddy odor, but the toxins inside are completely untouched. Drinking that is silently destroying your organs. In a contaminated zone, water filtered through a Sawyer is only microbiologically safe. To actually make it drinkable, you absolutely have to run it through a secondary, specialized activated carbon filter to absorb those chemicals. Look at the Sawyer squeeze as an incredible microbiological barrier, but never treat it as a chemical shield. If you're a prepper who's willing to drop $100 on the GRAYL GeoPress Purifier for your emergency survival kit, thinking that a high price tag means it can handle any toxic water source out there, you should stop and consider its specific limitations. This device can actually filter out viruses, which is something options like the LifeStraw or Sawyer squeeze just cannot do. But if you're planning to take it into an industrial chemical disaster zone, that plan has a major flaw. Don't get me wrong. This 24-ounce GRAYL GeoPress is highly capable. The press mechanism uses your body weight to filter water incredibly fast, giving you clean water in just 8 seconds. It combines an electrode-sorptive ceramic fiber media with ultra-fine activated carbon to wipe out 99.99% of viruses, bacteria, and protozoan parasites in nature. If you're backpacking or hiking in the mountains, this performance is excellent for wilderness survival. But when faced with heavy concentrations of industrial chemicals and heavy metals, the device faces severe performance limitations. Here's the thing: the reason an expensive piece of gear like this struggles in these conditions is because the ultra-fine activated carbon layer in the GRAYL is only designed to handle trace amounts of chemicals typically found in nature. If you use this to filter water near industrial zones, scrapyards, oil spills, or heavily pesticide-ridden areas, the sheer volume of toxins will saturate and paralyze the filter cartridge on the very first press. Once the activated carbon is maxed out on toxins, high concentrations of heavy metals like lead, mercury, and arsenic will pass right through the filter with zero resistance. In fact, the manufacturer explicitly states that this device only reduces arsenic by about 54.5%, meaning over half of that toxic substance remains in your water. The most dangerous part about using this in a contaminated zone is that the water coming out still looks completely crystal clear, and it's entirely odorless. The exact moment the filter cartridge stops working against chemicals happens completely silently. This creates a false sense of security. Because you assume the water is perfect, you keep drinking it. But in reality, you are directly ingesting heavy metals, which quietly damage your liver, kidneys, and nervous system over time. Now, the manufacturer makes it very clear that this device is not designed to protect against industrial disasters or water sources contaminated with high doses of lead and mercury. In that kind of emergency scenario, the only reliable way to ensure safety is to pack up the bottle and move as fast as possible to find a cleaner, natural water source. There are no shortcuts around these technical limits. If you're thinking about dropping cash on the BKLES 3-in-1 water purifier for your emergency survival kit, because it looks incredibly cool, and you figure throwing it into your bag means you're good to go, you need to understand its specific limits. It runs on electricity, it has solar charging, and it boasts a 6-stage filtration system. Sounds like a mini mobile water treatment plant, right? But if you take this into an industrial chemical disaster zone, this tech-heavy device becomes completely useless. Now, I'm not denying that the BKLES BK3000 is convenient. The automatic electric pump saves you from hand fatigue. There's a solar panel if the battery dies. And in a worst-case scenario, you can switch to a manual hand pump. Its 0.01 micron ultrafiltration membrane does an incredible job blocking bacteria and parasites. For camping and trekking near natural rivers and streams, this thing is a dream. But that is wilderness survival. When faced with heavy concentrations of industrial chemicals and heavy metals, it is completely helpless. Why is all this tech still useless? Well, the device does have an activated carbon stage and KDF media to absorb chemicals, but because this is a portable outdoor device, its filter cartridge is extremely small. If you run into heavily contaminated water, like near an industrial zone, a scrapyard, or an area sprayed heavily with pesticides, that carbon layer will saturate with toxins, and it'll become completely paralyzed after just the first few liters. At that point, highly toxic heavy metals like lead, mercury, and arsenic will pass right through that 0.01 micron ultrafiltration membrane with zero resistance. This brings us to a major point of uncertainty. The manufacturer's own documentation for this device has plenty of vague specifications. proving it was never designed for extreme contamination scenarios. What makes this particularly dangerous in a chemically contaminated zone is that there is absolutely no warning sign when the filter cartridge fails. The chemical filtration stage will die much earlier than the 1,000-liter limit advertised by the company. But even when that happens, the pumped water will still look perfectly crystal clear and clean. This visual appearance creates a false sense of security. You assume the electric machine is purifying everything perfectly, so you keep drinking, only to directly ingest toxins that quietly destroy your liver and kidneys. In an emergency scenario like that, all the solar charging and electric pumping tech in the world is completely meaningless. Your only way to survive is to pack the machine into your bag and move as fast as possible to find a clean, natural water source. The manufacturer built this for camping and filtering natural water. It should absolutely not be used as a filtration device for industrial disasters or radioactive contaminants. If you're a trekker or a prepper who's planning to toss the Bachgold squeeze filter bag into your emergency kit, because it's incredibly lightweight, thinking it can handle any water source out there, you need to pause for a second. It only weighs about 45 to 55 grams, rolls up incredibly tight, and can even filter out microscopic viruses. But if you take this convenient filter bag into an industrial chemical disaster zone, it's going to turn into a silent death trap. Don't get me wrong, the Bachgold squeeze is excellent. The smart TPU squeeze pouch design means clean water is just a gentle squeeze away. Its high-end version uses an electroabsorptive nanofiber membrane to completely block everything from bacteria and parasites to microscopic viruses like norovirus or rotavirus. If you're heading into the deep woods or mountains, carrying this is incredibly convenient, and you won't have to worry about acute diarrhea. But that's wilderness survival. When faced with industrial chemicals and heavy metals, this thing is completely helpless. Why is it so helpless? Because at their core, dissolved chemical molecules like pesticides, nitrates, or heavy metals like lead and arsenic are incredibly microscopic. There's no way a mechanical hollow fiber membrane can stop them. They will pass right through the filter pores with zero resistance. Sure, the manufacturer integrates an activated carbon or nano layer to remove chlorine taste and bind with trace amounts of heavy metals found in nature, just to improve flavor. But that is only for clean wilderness streams. If you hit heavily contaminated water, this tiny cartridge will saturate with toxins and become completely paralyzed. After the very first few squeeze cycles, all those toxins will pass straight into your drinking water, causing acute poisoning or accumulating to destroy your liver and kidneys incredibly fast. And here's the thing, it actually filters out sediment too well. When you squeeze water through the pouch, the output looks crystal clear and has zero foul odor. This clean appearance creates a false sense of security. You assume the water is fine, but in reality, you're directly ingesting heavy metals without even knowing it. So, draw a hard red line for yourself. Stay far away from water sources near pesticide-sprayed fields, downstream from factories, or close to mining areas. If you happen to end up in those zones, the only way to stay alive is to pack the filter bag into your pack and move as fast as possible to find a cleaner water source. The manufacturer has strictly warned against this. This device is only meant for typical natural freshwater sources, and it is absolutely not a solution for chemically contaminated water.